Simply Scuba presents the Deco Stop Podcast. Hi, all you wonderful people out there. Welcome to Simply Scuba and welcome to the Deco Stop Podcast. I'm Mark, a former dive instructor, and I'm here to talk about scuba diving and stuff. It is Easter weekend, everybody. So long weekend. We get to chill out, and hopefully some of you are going out scuba diving. But I actually have some good news. One of the website updates that I'm talking about is we do have a special offer on at the moment. It runs from Friday until Monday. This unfortunately only applies if you're based in the UK. So if you're listening to this outside of the UK, I'm sorry, but you have to sort of switch off so you don't get envy with this. But we're actually offering 15% off of all Atomic, Bear, Fourth Element, Oceanic, Santee, and X Deep Dive equipment. Now, they're traditionally brands that don't usually get discounted that often. So if you have been looking at a X Deep something or other, a bolt snap or a BCD, then this is the prime chance to get yourself some money off of it. The same with Atomic. Very rarely that they get discounted at all. Fourth Element as well tends to hold their prices. So this only applies here in the UK. Unfortunately, we couldn't do it sort of outside. And all you have to do is use the code Easter15, so Easter15 at checkout, and that should get you your 15% discount. Other than that, looking at the website, we had the first of the new color range from AquaLung on the Reveal X2 diving mask, which is petrol blue. And it's hard to describe. It's a very unique blue color, and I'm quite digging it, to be honest. It is quite different, but I do like the color blue on most of my stuff. So if you're sort of interested, check it out. I think this color range you're gonna start to see that in some other ranges from their fins and snorkels and bits and bobs to match it. So that's quite funky. Along with that, we had the new fast strap. So the AquaLung fast strap is a bit like the what's it called? The Fourth Elements. I think it's just called mask strap, to be honest. It's a elasticated mask strap. I think the fast strap was the original one, and then Fourth Elements have one that's very similar. But there's some new designs coming from AquaLung. One that includes this petrol blue color. These kind of hook onto the buckles of most masks out there. I actually tried them on with most of the masks that I have at home, and it fit all of them. Of course, we never like to promise it will fit all masks because there's no way that it will fit every single mask under the sun, but it does fit a wide range from a wide range of different brands as well. So yeah, perfectly fine. And at the moment we've got 3 different colors, but I imagine there's more on the way. And we also have a new color range of the AquaLung AquaFlex wetsuit, which is a kind of black-grey melange kind of color. Previous version had this grey chest and then a electric blue on the arms, which I quite liked actually, but mainly because it was blue. But yeah, now we have a more subdued black and grey version coming, which is quite snazzy. So check that out. Again, so links and all that will be down in the description below. Moving straight into social channel updates. So Friday's AskMark, I answered questions on helium release valves on watches. So this is one of those things or a subject that comes up maybe once a year or something when someone's not quite sure how a helium release valve works and whether they're worth it on a watch. It's mainly for commercial saturation diver sort of ranges. On a normal scuba, recreational, even a lot of tech dives, you're not going to need a helium release valve because you literally can't open it underwater, and it's to allow any helium that's migrated its way into the watch to escape. It's not that it's full of helium, and if you open it, it escapes. Well, I suppose it kind of is, but we're trying to get rid of the helium. That's the whole point of a helium release valve. But that was quite interesting. Someone wanted to sort of make the choice between an outlaw and a rogue BCD. These are sort of AquaLung's new like modular BCDs, and they're kind of similar. The Rogue is basically a beefed up version of the Outlaw, they're both travel BCDs. They're both wings. They both have that, I think it's called modlock system, so you can actually take the waistband off and swap it for a different size or whatever. And they wanted to sort of make the choice between the two, and I think I landed on the Rogue just because one of their main points was they wanted a bit more buoyancy, a bit more lift in their BCD, and the Outlaw was a very similar lift to a previous BCD that wasn't sort of enough, or didn't have enough lift for them. So the Rogue made a bit more sense. Dive computer alarms. Someone wanted a dive computer that would tell them if they sort of got down to a certain tank pressure, which does exist. There's loads of dive computers that do that. But one that they asked for, which I don't think exists, or at least I haven't seen, is one that would alert you when you get down to, say, 2 minutes of no decompression. So I don't think that exists. That would be kind of a cool feature if you could custom set how close it gets to your NDL before it alerts you. I don't know, maybe it does exist, but I don't think any of my dive computers have had that. And also transmitters for other divers. They which I think does exist, or at least did exist in the links, the LiquidVision links. They basically wanted, if you're a dive guide or a instructor or a dive master, whatever, and you're leading a group of divers and you have a transmitter attached to each of their regulators so that you can monitor their tank pressures on your dive computer. I think the links could do something along those lines, but I think nowadays it mainly comes down to range, because transmitters, their range is only about a meter or two. So yeah, as soon as you go out of that range, then you lose all signal, and also cross signals, because if they're all sort of sending out these signals at the same time, you get a lot of interference, and the signals just get jammed. And that's why something like the Shearwater Swift transmitter is quite clever. It's quite a passive, polite transmitter. It listens out, and if any other transmitter is transmitting, it holds back, waits for it to sort of complete its signal, and then it transmits to your computer, which I think is quite smart to just avoid all interference. Dive lights as well. Someone wanted to know, like, the general, what would be a minimum dive light for a primary, which is quite tough because it's very personal and dependent on where you're diving, as well as sort of beam angles and all that kind of stuff. But now that we have torches like the Mara's EOS range that have an adjustable beam angle on the head, you can kind of pick and choose. But I think most divers nowadays, as long as you just go for a spotlight, you're going to do fine. It's quite rare that divers choose a floodlight, unless you're a photographer, videographer. There is quite an interesting, I don't know if this is still true, but we did notice, like, anecdotal data that it tended to be male divers tended to go for spotlights, and it was a higher percentage of female divers who went for floodlights. Now, I think that was all anecdotal, just based on whoever was logged in when they made the purchase, but I thought that was quite interesting. I don't know if there is any actual sort of rhyme or reason to that, but yeah, that was just something in the back of my mind when I was thinking about that. Different types of, like, defog mask styles. So Cressy at the moment, they have two different versions. You can get something like the Cressy, is it the A1 mask? That comes with a sort of a pre-treated mask lens that is like anti-fog. And someone was worried about sort of the long-term effects of that, whether that defogging would wear out. I did see one case on Reddit where someone accidentally pre-treated their mask, or their A1 mask, with just toothpaste, and of course just scratched it off. And that's a bit of a waste of a relatively expensive mask. Or you get the new Cressy Quantum, which actually has, like, heat sinks built into the skirt, which is very unique to help reduce fogging up inside of a mask, as well as that internal skirt, similar to the one on the Cressy. I can't remember the name of it. Calibro. The Calibro spearfishing apnea mask. That has like an internal skirt that just goes over the top of your nose, between your eyes and your nose, and that helps so that whenever you're clearing your mask, the like warm, humid gas coming out of your nose doesn't flush straight over the mask lenses. So that helps to sort of reduce it. That will be the direction that I go, more down the Calibro or the Quantum, just because it's a bit more mechanical. Instead of it's not that you can't rub off the that internal skirt or those heat sinks in the skirt around your face. It's not something that you can get rid of with a bit of toothpaste accidentally. So that's probably the direction that I would go down. But I don't know. Let me know down in the comments below what you reckon. And finally, on BCD cleaning, someone was asking if you clean out the inside of your BCD between dives, which I think is a little bit excessive unless you're diving somewhere particularly dirty. And if so, or sort of how would you sort of wash out the BCD? And I think it mainly comes down to, I mean, I always drain my BCD between dives because I know a lot of divers, they get, after a few successive dives, you can hear this like sloshing around on the inside of their BCD, just because every time you dump any gas out of your BCD, a little bit of water makes its way in, and it just collects down at the bottom, and most divers forget about it. So after a dive, I always kind of lean over to the left and pull on that kidney dump. And that helps to purge any seawater that's trapped inside of the bladder. But then, if it's like after a day's diving, then I tend to wash it out with fresh water. And if I have any, I use a decent detergent. If I'm storing it for any sort of great length of time, then I definitely use a disinfectant detergent to kill any nasties, because that's the last thing that you want inside of a sealed plastic bag that you occasionally orally inflate. I think I heard, I don't know whether it's a wives' tale, or whether it's actually true. I've never actually looked into it, but apparently a scuba diver died because he got some kind of bacterial infection by like going to orally inflate his BCD, but you push that purge button, and of course it pushes a little bit of gas into your mouth, and because it wasn't cleaned, or it just had like bacterial growth on the inside, it just that got him. So I always make sure that it's really clean for like longer periods, and make sure there's no like moisture on the inside for long periods, especially when it's being stored, just to make sure nothing's growing on the inside. Saturday's Google was on snorkels. It's a fairly important piece of kit. I always keep a snorkel inside of my my sort of grab bag, just because it is quite convenient. And when you just want to just snorkel around on the surface, I mean, we had it where I was diving out in the Philippines, and our group ended the dive first, and I got out, and the rest of the group was sort of taking their time doing their stops. I was just like, you know what, I'm just going to go in, and I think I saw some plastic floating on the surface. So I was like, I'm just going to sort of pick up some stuff, and just grab my snorkel. It's so much easier with a snorkel than just a mask. So I always tend to sort of keep one with me. So I answered some questions on snorkels. The dive brief is going to be on compasses. I think I did the what did I do? Was it top tips on compasses earlier last Tuesday? So on dive brief, I was just sort of breaking down the how to use a compass properly, or at least the basics of using dive compasses. And next Tuesday is going to be top tips on diving from a rib, so a rigid inflatable boat, or strictly a. Well, no, I think there might be two different versions, and there's a bit of division online whether you spell it RIB or RHIB, because it's a rigid hull inflatable boat. But anyway, just some tips. If you've never been diving from a rib, it's one of those things that you kind of have to learn on the go. it's quite rare, or it's not included in the like training procedure to teach you all these kind of things. It's just something that you pick up as you dive on a rib. So I just thought it'd just be quite nice if you've never done it before, to do a little top tip video on do's and don'ts on diving from a rib. Moving straight into the news, this was quite a manufacturer-heavy sort of news week. I didn't see much else, but on Instagram I kept seeing these things pop up on my feed, and I was like, ooh, that's quite interesting. The first one is from Oceanic, and this is their 50th anniversary year, so they are running a sweepstakes, which you can enter. It runs from, I think it was the 8th of April up until the end of December. 31st of December 2022. And you have, let me try and start again. So the grand prize, which most people will be interested in, is a liveaboard to Palau. So this is a 7-night trip in Palau to celebrate Oceanic's 50th anniversary. A 7-night trip to Palau with the Master Fleet, which has a US dollar value of just over $4,000. And you're going to be sailing on the Palau Siren liveaboard, diving on coral reefs, blue holes, caves, channels, and more. Second place is a Delta 50 Regulator. So this is the new version of the Delta, and they only show it in a new sort of electric blue color, which is quite funky. But I don't know whether it's going to come in any other colors, or whether this is just their. Oh no, it actually says in the color of their choice. So I imagine there's going to be a few other colors coming, which is quite cool. The Delta range has always been their kind of workhorse of a regulator. It comes with the EDX first stage, which is a solid first stage, is a good all-rounder, and the second stage is pretty funky. It's their Delta range, so it's got this triangle on the front cover, adjustable breathing, all that kind of stuff. So that's like second place. They have a monthly giveaway of a Shadow 50 mask. So this is a new version of the Shadow mask. I think this was one of my first masks, and I still have one today. It often sits in the backdrop of my videos, and just comfortable. Like a great white shark, it hasn't had to change in years because it just simply works. And the Shadow 50 is a new version that offers a UV tinted tempered glass lens that helps to reduce glare on the surface and improve color vibrance in the water. It comes with a limited edition mask strap, neoprene mask strap with Bob Hollis's signature on the back of it. So that's quite funky, and that's going to be a monthly giveaway, which is quite cool. And then they also have weekly giveaways, which is an Oceanic branded hat and some actual Oceanic branded socks, which is kind of cool. They're quite retro inspired. They're calling it a swag pack. So to enter, there's a few different ways. The first way is to purchase a qualifying product. So any life support or Geo Air, Shadow 50 and Delta 50 item must be purchased and registered with Oceanic by December 31st, 2022. That gets you 10 entries. To register your product, you scan the dealer exclusive QR code. It's one of those like square shaped barcodes with all the little dots on it. You scan that in store, and that gets you 5 entries. To visit a dealer and scan that QR barcode, that gets you another 5 entries, no purchase necessary. And of course, you can enter online on Oceanic's social media or fill out an entry form on their website. That gets you a single entry. And then you're in the sweepstakes, so that's kind of cool. Something that we don't see too often, especially on this kind of time scale with like weekly and monthly prizes. So if you're interested, head over to oceanicworldwide.com or find Oceanic on Instagram, their social media pages. The next one is Hollis. So Hollis is kind of part of Oceanic, with Bob Hollis having created Oceanic over 50 years ago. Hollis is more of their technical side, as it were. And a post that I saw on their social media page was that they brought out a Neotek 4 3mm wetsuit. So Neotek, has been in their range for years now, but it's always been like a 7 or 8 mil thick semi-dry, so for cold waters. But this is the first time that I've seen it in a 4 mil suit. It's that front chest zip, so it opens up across the front of your chest over your shoulders, and it has an integrated hood. So for not the coldest of cold waters, but actually, you know what, for fairly cold waters, this would be a good choice. 4 mil is seems to be the new 5 mil. I'm seeing a lot of wetsuits today coming out in 4 mil thickness, but because it's pretty much a semi-dry, it just means that it's going to slow the water ingress. All of the seams are glued, so that's going to help to slow water ingress. You've got thigh pockets as well, so you've got a bit of storage, and with that integrated hood, yeah, it just helps slow the water down so you don't get that rush of cold trickling water down the back of your neck as soon as you jump in. It's really going to slow it down. So yeah, if you're in the market for a sort of like a 5 mil that's going to extend your diving, then yeah, Neotek seems to be quite fancy. Apparently that's shipping from April 2022, so you'll probably start to see that in your dive center hopefully fairly soon. And the final one today is on Mara's, their Instagram page. They announced their SXS62 X Regulator. So this is a side exhaust second stage. Now, I love side exhaust second stages. You've probably seen my Poseidon Cyclones. I used to dive with Oceanic, what were they called? Omega 2 regulators, and I love them to bits. I also had Poseidon Extreme regulators at one point, and I love the practicality of them, but they traditionally never really sold well, and I never really understood why. I think it goes back to a few weeks ago, is just that divers don't like change. They don't like it when something isn't quite the same as what they're used to. But this is kind of bridging that gap, because traditionally a side exhaust second stage has a purge valve on the side of it, on like the opposite side of the hose, which if you're a new scuba diver and you're looking to invest in your first regulator, it looks different to what you've been trained to use. It looks different to what your instructor uses. So you almost like subconsciously cross it off your list because that's different. That's not for me. But the new SXS actually has that purge button on the front. So I think this is going to be a great bridge to kind of test the waters and hopefully get side exhaust second stages into more divers' kit bags, because they're very, very practical. Most second stages, they'll have a purge valve on the bottom, so they have to be the right way up. Otherwise, you'll just end up with a mouthful of water. So especially when you're donating gas on your octo, if you hand it to your buddy or your buddy grabs it and puts it in upside down, they're just going to get a mouthful of water. But with the side exhaust, there is no way to put it in upside down, so it doesn't matter. And I used to love this for teaching for that exact reason, that there was no up or down. As long as it was in your mouth, you could still purge it and breathe from it effectively. So hopefully this is going to make side exhaust second stages more mainstream, and that will allow more manufacturers to kind of relax a bit and go, okay, yeah, this one does pretty well, so we're going to sort of bring ours back, because Hollis had a version, Oceanic had a version, quite a few manufacturers had these side exhaust second stages, and they work really, really well. It's just, I figure, because they're a little bit different, most divers don't sort of trust them off the bat. And of course it has all of Maris's clever little technology, a bypass tube. It has a dynamic flow control system as well. So yeah, just for a really nice regulator, something quite modern and snazzy. SXS62X, which the second stage itself is that their tiny one. Yeah, it's the lightest regulator or the lightest first stage in the industry at the moment. It's a tiny little thing. When I first saw the photo of it, you don't think too much of it, but when I actually saw the first one in the box and held it in my hand, you're like, wow, this is tiny. So for traveling divers, perfect. And it has AST, which is auto sealing technology. So it's a little sort of spring-loaded pneumatic system that helps to protect water from getting into the first stage. So yeah, all sorts of clever stuff. And yeah, I don't know when that's going to start shipping, but hopefully soon. And hopefully I can get my my grubby little mitts on one to test it out and show you guys. But yeah, I get quite excited when I see a side exhaust second stage. So hopefully we'll see more of them sort of out and about when we're actually diving and people really using them, because I promise you they are great. Moving swiftly onto my product of the week, which is their AquaLung AquaFlex wetsuits that I mentioned at the beginning of the show. And this is one of those wetsuits where AquaLung are trying to be like new, very forward-thinking trendsetters as far as it comes to like wetsuit designs. They've heard that a lot of divers are sort of saying, "Oh, yeah, great, a new wetsuit," and it comes in black, but now they're bringing out sort of funky colors, and in their AquaFlex, the women's version, you've got this sort of purple star constellation pattern to it. The men's version, yeah, you had that like bright electric blue. You do have this this newer black and grey if you don't like bright electric blue, so you do get a choice, but the suit itself is fantastic, and it's mainly down to the neoprene that it's made from. It has a 4-way stretch neoprene all over it, which is about 3 times as stretchy as just standard neoprene. It's one of those things where if you're stood in your dive center and you have a cheap wetsuit right next to it, you can literally feel the difference, and it's really easy to make someone choose the nicer version, because you can feel that standard neoprene, yeah, it is cheap and it does the job, but actually stretchier neoprene is far more comfortable and then far more practical in the long run. So yeah, and also it helps with sizing as well. I think we had a girl at the dive center, and she ended up getting into a wetsuit that was 2 sizes too small for her, but she didn't really notice because the neoprene itself is just so stretchy. It is really impressive, and that's mainly down to the new cut as well. It's got this sort of clever tailoring, so minimal stitching. As soon as you put a line of stitching in a wetsuit, it restricts it, because the actual stitch itself cannot stretch very much, nowhere near the amount that the actual panel of neoprene can stretch. So by reducing the number of stitch points on it, it actually makes it much more flexible. And you also have that benefit of it doesn't have stitching around the edges. So around your cuffs, you'll notice that it just pinches together, and it doesn't have that like sewn edge that a lot of wetsuits have. So when you're trying to put your foot through and it kind of catches on your heel, or you're trying to put your hand through and you've really got to squeeze it through because you've got this like edge seam, it doesn't on the AquaFlex. It is just, it's not quite raw cut, because raw cuts can rip and tear quite easily. It's kind of pinched and then heat sealed, so it just helps you, again, just get in and out of the suit that much easier. They say that it has an official name. It's called X-Tend cuff finish that helps you preserve the stretch, but it also has that quite smart polish sort of finish to it, but it's also durable, unlike just an edge raw cut. All the parts of it, including the sleeve or the cuffs, the cuffs have, which is quite common on wetsuits nowadays, this new like silicone traction pad that you have to help keep your dive computer in position, so it doesn't like slip and roll around up or down your sleeve. So that's quite clever, and the the outer nylon material is actually designed to be a little bit tighter to prevent like Velcro snags. You tend to see it on a lot of school suits, just around the neck where the Velcro traditionally sticks. It's all like fluffy, where the Velcro has like picked up that like nylon lining and pulled it out, but on the AquaFlex it's much sort of tighter and much stronger, so it helps to be sort of resistant to abrasions and those kind of Velcro snags. And yeah, liquid rubber seams as well, so instead of just having that raw stitching, they stitch it together, but then they have this liquid rubber sort of poured over the seam that helps to bind and make the seam smooth, which is quite clever, but also it makes it strong. So even if you do rub one particular stitch and it does actually sever it, it doesn't go anywhere and it doesn't unravel all the way up the seam because it's all like stuck together. So yeah, all very clever. But also the neoprene itself is non-petroleum based, so it's much more environmentally friendly. We're seeing this more and more on a lot of wetsuits nowadays. I don't think it's Ulex. I think that's only on their Escape wetsuits, but this is probably their neoprene. Correction, they're limestone-based neoprene. So yeah, just much more environmentally friendly. So sort of going forwards, you don't have to feel quite so guilty. But yeah, lovely wetsuit. When I first put it on, you're like, ooh, yeah, it is plenty of bend and flex, and because of that flex, it's easy to put on, it's easy to take off, and if you don't fit quite so perfectly into the size chart, you don't have to worry quite as much because it is quite a forgiving suit. Okay, so let's get into my question of the week, which this week is side exhaust back because of that SXS second stage, the new one from Mares? It kind of hopefully opens up the doors to, I know I spoke about it a little bit, I say a little bit, quite a lot earlier, when I was talking about it in the news section, but I am hoping that this will open up the doors to bring side exhaust back because they really are a practical second stage. And I honestly don't know why more divers don't use them or didn't invest in them, because I was super excited years back when the Oceanic Omega 3 came out and the Hollis, what was it, the SE 500 when that came out, because they were the new upgraded version of the regulators that I were using, and they were so practical, these side exhaust second stages. And the Omega 2 was wonderful because it came in a whole range of different colors. I managed to get my hands on a set of clear plastic ones, so this is very like 1990s for anyone who was around in the 90s. You got a lot of like see-through plastic. I think you could see there were like sort of pink and purple see-through ones, so you could see the action kind of working when you breathe. I managed to get a colorless version of that, and I use that all the time to teach. They were lovely, very practical regulators, but when the Omega 3 came out and the 500 SE or the SE 500, whatever it was called, when they came out, sort of handful, but it was usually to someone who had the Omega 2 and they wanted to upgrade. So it was quite rare for new divers to go, oh yes, I definitely want that, even if you like explain to them, because usually when I was an instructor at a dive center, the most popular dive equipment was what I was wearing, because students always assume, oh, well, if my instructor's using it, it must be the best, if not very good. So I'll invest in that. And but still with that, they weren't that popular, and I could never really figure out why. So I'm hoping that the SXS sort of can bring that side exhaust design in. Mares are very good for this. They had it with their loop second stage, and they had, was it called the VR, which was a vertical second stage, so that the hose came straight in from the underneath, which is quite practical for certain reasons, not for like most traditional recreational diving setups, which I think is why that didn't sell in sort of great numbers. But for a side-mounted stage cylinder, yeah, very practical just to have the hose routing like straight downwards. And Maris are quite good at just thinking outside of the box and creating something a little bit different. But I think this is kind of what they've done with side exhaust. They've looked at side exhaust. They know that it's a clever, very practical setup, but they've also considered why don't people invest in side exhaust? And it seems to be that they've sort of concluded that it's that front purge button, because so many divers are so used to having that purge button right on the front. As soon as it's on the side, it's a little bit weird, it's a bit different, so they don't quite trust it 100%, so they just move on to something else that looks much more traditional to what they're used to. So by having that purge button on the front of the SXS, hopefully this will really sort of bring side exhaust second stages back into the mainstream. And yeah, if more divers use it, then it's exposed to sort of other scuba divers. They tend to get used to it, and yeah, it is quite easy to understand. Okay, your regulator looks a little bit different than mine. It's like long and thin instead of just a round circle. But yeah, that's a purge button. That's a mouthpiece. That's how I'm going to use it. So I mean, I actually had a diver once, and we were. It must have been like a liveaboard trip, something in the Red Sea, and I was diving on my Poseidon Cyclones, and he came up to me and he asked to switch just because he wanted to try out a side exhaust second stage. I was like, yeah, like passed it over to him, and he was breathing from it for a bit just to like sort of try it out, and he's like, yeah, thanks. I was like, yeah, you're welcome. You can use them if you really want to, but I think it is quite novel for most divers because you don't see it every day, and they're not that classic like traditional design. So hopefully with this SXS, we'll start to see other brands coming out with similar side exhaust, and it will be a bit more mainstream. Not that all second stages are going to become side exhaust or anything, but hopefully you'll get, okay, this is our traditional lineup, this is our side exhaust, and this is the sort of the offset. So yeah, hopefully it's going to become just a standard part of the lineup, where if a manufacturer brings out like or produces 6 regulators or so, 1 or 2 will be side exhaust in their range, just so that it gives people the option. Because other than like this new regulator out there, I think it's mainly down to Poseidon, and just because they haven't changed their designs, that's the only reason why. But yeah, they're not the most sort of inexpensive regulator out there, Poseidon. But other than that, you're quite limited if you like really desperately want a side exhaust second stage. So hopefully this will sort of help to bring side exhaust back, and yeah, sort of keep divers diving on side exhaust, because I do promise you they are very easy and very comfortable. And I mean, the worst case scenario is that you have to kind of tilt your head a little bit to be able to get a little bit of like remaining water out of the bottom. That's it. Otherwise, they're just fantastic to use, because yeah, it really doesn't matter which way up they are. So especially on like an octo, your alternate air source, you can just pass it to the other diver, and you don't have to worry about the hose being the right way round or upside down or anything. So yeah, they're just very safe, easy to use. So yeah, hopefully we'll start to see more. And that's it for the podcast this week. Thank you so very much for listening, everybody, and happy Easter weekend. Hopefully you managed to get the long weekend off so you can relax, and hopefully the dive sites aren't too busy. I imagine now that the sun's out, the water's warming up, and people have had a nice long weekend, that they can sort of head out to the dive site. Remember, if you're here in the UK and you need some new equipment, we do have 15% off Atomic Bear, Fourth Element, Oceanic Santee, and X Deep Dive equipment. The code Easter15, Easter15, that runs out sort of like Monday midnight, or like 11:59 on Monday. What is it, British Standard Time or GMT? I forget the difference. But yeah, you've got today and tomorrow, basically, depending on when you're listening to this. Yeah, just use that code at checkout, and yeah, unfortunately, it only applies to UK orders. So if you're listening to this outside of the UK, dreadfully sorry. But yeah, we couldn't manage to make it work outside of the UK. If you enjoyed this, remember to follow, subscribe, whatever it's called, on whatever platform you're listening to this at, because it is all over the internet. It's on sort of SoundClouds, and it's on your Spotify's, YouTubes, and whatnot. And if you could take a moment to rate us, thumbs up or 5 stars or whatever it is, comment where you can on sort of whatever you've sort of listened. If you've got any interesting opinions about anything that you've heard today, especially about side exhaust regulators, because if you couldn't tell, I love them to bits, so I'd love a good discussion about side exhaust. Remember to head over to simplyscuba.com. That's where all of our interesting, shiny dive equipment is. Anything that I've mentioned today, I'll pop a link down in the description below, or to the side, wherever the description is, depending on where you're listening to this. And if you have any questions, comments, or queries that you would like me to elaborate on, if you pop the comments down in the comment section and use the hashtag AskMark, either at the beginning or the end, it doesn't really matter which. It's just hashtag AskMark. It just helps me find it, and I will discuss it in Friday's Ask Mark. Thank you again for listening, everybody, and of course, safe diving.